B'siyata d'shmai, we're going to learn Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed Ches. We're going to start on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom of the Amud. We saw in the Mishnah on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, according to Rabbi Eliezer, one's allowed to suspend a strainer onto the barrel on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. According to the Chachomim say you're not allowed to suspend such a strainer onto the barrel even on Yom Tov, and it goes without saying that on Shabbos it's Asur. Iboyeluhu. The Gemara is now asking a question, and it seems that the Gemara is only asking according to the opinion of the Chachomim. According to the Chachomim, that one is not allowed to suspend such a strainer, not on Yom Tov and not on Shabbos, because it's a very severe malacha. The question is, what malacha is this, according to the Chachomim? And Rabbi Akiva Eiger discusses why, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the same question doesn't apply, because Rabbi Eliezer also agrees one's not allowed to suspend the strainer on Shabbos, and Rabbi Akiva Eiger deals with that. But it seems from the Gemara that according to the Chachomim, that one's not allowed to suspend the strainer not only on Shabbos but also on Yom Tov. According to the Chachomim, the Gemara is now asking, how severe is suspending the strainer on Shabbos regarding the melachos of Shabbos? Iboyeluhu tolo mai. It's true, it says ein toilin, you're not allowed to suspend the strainer on Shabbos. If you did, then what are the ramifications of that? How serious is that? Omar Rav Yosef tolo chayev chatos. Rav Yosef says that it's a chiyuv chatos. It's one of the lamed tes melachos. And the Rambam explains that this is called making an oihel kavua, a permanent roofing, and is a tolda of boine, and therefore is chayev chatos. Omar le Abaya elo me'ata tolo kuzo b'sichsa hochanami de mechayev. Abaya is asking, if you take a little jug called a kuza and you hang it on a peg, are you also suggesting that it's going to be chayev because it's the area underneath the peg, underneath this jug is being covered over by the jug, and just hanging it is going to be chayev for making an oihel, is going to be chayev min ha-Torah? And the Mefarshim explain exactly what did Abaya mean by this comparison between hanging a jug on a peg and between suspending a strainer on a barrel. It seems that they have no connection with each other. Why should they be similar? So it's discussed in the Mefarshim. But either way, Abaya said that if you're going to say that suspending a strainer is chayev, then it should also be that hanging up a small jug on a peg should also be chayev, and that's clearly not the case. So there must be another understanding into the Chachomim who say it's osur to suspend the strainer on Shabbos. Elo Amar Abaya midrabanon hi. Abaya say that according to the Chachomim, it's only osur midrabanon to suspend the strainer. Shelo yase kederech shu oise b'choil. This is called uvda d'choil, doing an activity on Shabbos that is inappropriate for Shabbos. It's more a weekday type of activity, and therefore it's osur midrabanon to do it on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Mankit Abaya chumrei masnita v'toni. Abaya, he would collect the different groups of teachings in the brises, he would group them together, v'toni, and would teach them. And there's going to be 3 groups here. One group where using or doing a certain activity is a melacha mamash min ha-Torah and is chayev chatos. Another group where it's only osur midrabanon, it's potur aval osur. And the third group, which is mutar lekatchila, one's allowed to do it initially on Shabbos. What are they? As follows. Hagoid. Hagoid is a type of a bag made of leather, of hide, and in this bag they would put wine, or they would put other liquids, and the mouth of this bag was very wide, and this bag typically had straps that they could tie the entrance, the opening, they could tie it closed, and when they would travel, then at night they would actually open up this bag, stretch the mouth open as wide as possible, and use the straps to tie the edges as far apart as possible, opening it up that way, letting the cool air get to the wine, so the wine should not, or the milk, in order that it should not get ruined overnight. And spreading out this bag, this noid, is similar to making a roofing over the area underneath it. And it's an issue with oihel, or the hamishmeres, or the case we're talking about in the Mishnah, which is spreading out a strainer, suspending a strainer onto the barrel. Kilo, or spreading out a canopy on Shabbos where the top, where the roofing, where the canopy typical would be draped over a pole across the middle of a bar, across a bar in the middle of the bed, and they would drape it over onto the right, onto the left. And we're talking about a type of canopy where at the top, the flat part of the canopy before it drapes down to the side is a tefach wide. That's the kilo. The kisei galin, and a chair from a place of galin, and this was a chair that was disassembled and reassembled. Whenever they wanted to use it, they would assemble it. When they finished with it, they would take it apart. And in all these cases, lo yaseh, one should not do them on Shabbos. In the case of the goyd and the mishmeres and the kilo, there's an issue of making an oyhel arai. And in the case of the kisei, the chair, it's also an arai, and also that you might fix the pieces together very tightly. And if you are tokea, then there's an issue with makeh b'patish and other issues. And therefore, lo yaseh, you should not do them on Shabbos. V'im also potur aval osur. If you did them, then even though they were osur, you're potur. These are not biblical melachas. That was one group. Another group, ohole keva lo yaseh, making a fixed tent, a fixed roofing on Shabbos. One's not allowed to do it. V'im also chayev chatos, and doing it will be considered boine and is one of the melachas of Shabbos, which is punishable with the whole severity of Hilchas Shabbos, and is chayev chatos if he did it by mistake. Aval mito, a regular bed which has been fully assembled and is just standing upright to save space or for convenience, and when you need it, when you want to go to sleep, you'll just lower it and put it down, even though when you lower it, the top of the bed is going to become an oyhel, and covering, a roofing over the area underneath it. Nonetheless, you didn't do anything. All you did was put the bed onto its feet. The kisei traskel, or a type of a chair which was foldable, but it was not totally detachable. It was just folded up, and they would just fold it up and put it on the side when they would not need it. And when they would need it, they would just open it up. Or the aslo, which is similar to the kisei traskel, it's a foldable type of chair. Just over here, they would use it in the beis hakisei, so there was a hole in the center of it. In all those cases, mutter lintoison lekatchila, one's allowed to even initially spread them out on Shabbos and put them into position. Because they've been fully structured before, all you're doing is putting them in place, and that's mutter. Continues the Gemara. V'ein noisnin litluya b'Shabbos. We saw in the Mishnah that according to Rebbe Eliezer, if you have a strainer suspended on a barrel, one's allowed to pour wine onto the strainer, even though the wine is going to fall through it, and the bits that you don't want, the residue is going to stay at the top. Nonetheless, Rebbe Eliezer says it's mutter, and Rashi in the Mishnah explains it's because ein derech boirer bekach, it's not a normal way, it's not a regular way of separating between the good and the bad, between what you desire and what you do not desire, and therefore, according to Rebbe Eliezer, he says it's mutter. The Chachamim say, ein noisnin litluya b'Shabbos, even if the strainer was put on before Shabbos, you're not allowed to pour the wine through the strainer on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, iboilahu. Shimer mai. What happens if somebody did strain the wine on Shabbos? He poured wine through the strainer on Shabbos. How serious is that? Omer of Kahana, Shimer chayev chatos. Rav Kahana says, is chayev chatos, it's a melacha of, we'll soon see what melacha it is, either boirer or merakid. We'll soon see that in the Gemara. Maskif lo Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi is asking a question on Rav Kahana. You, Rav Kahana, say that according to the Chachomim, it's chayev chatos. According to Rebbe Eliezer, it's mutter lekatchila. That's a very diverse argument. We don't normally find that one opinion says it's mutter lekatchila and the other opinion says it's an issa deraisa. Mi'ika midi derabonon mechayev chatos, Rebbe Eliezer shori lekatchila. Do we have any other such case? Do we ever find an example where, according to the Chachomim, it's a chiyuv chatos, and according to Rebbe Eliezer, says it's mutter lekatchila? Maskif lo Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef is now answering back and asking on Rav Shesha's question. Rav Shesha asked to Rav Kahana, how can you say the Chachomim say that it's an Issa Deiraisa? And if Rabbi Eliezer says it's mutter, Rav Yosef says, Alam, why not? I'll give you an example. Hari Irushel Zohov. And we've learnt about this early on in Masechas Shabbos, an ornament which looked like a city of gold. Reb Meir mechayev chatos. Reb Meir says it's not considered an ornament, and therefore it's a burden, and carrying it on Shabbos is punishable by chatos. Reb Eliezer shori lekatchila. And Reb Eliezer says you're allowed to go out with it lekatchila on Shabbos. So you see that it's not a problem with the Chachomim holding something is an Issa Deiraisa and the Reb Eliezer saying it's mutter. Mahi. Where do we find this? Let's hear the source. Let's discuss it. The Tanya we saw in the Braisa. A woman is not allowed to go out into Rishus Harabim, or to carry from Rishus Hayochid to Rishus Harabim, or vice versa, with this ornament which looked like a city of gold. Ve'im yotzo, if she went out, chayev chatos, she's chayev chatos. Divi Reb Meir, that's the opinion of Reb Meir. The Chachomim say, lo yiseitze. I agree with you, Reb Meir, that she should not go out with it. However, the Chachomim say to Reb Meir, we think it's osa, but it's only osa midrabanon. It's not considered a burden. It is an ornament. And however, we don't want you to go out with it because we're afraid you're going to take off the ornament and show it to your friends, and then you'll be carrying it in Rishus Harabim, and therefore midrabanon they said that one should not go out with it on Shabbos. Rebbe Eliezer said that the only people who wear such an expensive ornament are very prominent women. And those prominent women do not typically remove their ornaments to show it to their friend. There's no such risk, and therefore you're allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. So this is what Rav Yosef answered back to Rav Shesha's question. You, Rav Shesha, had the problem, how can Rebbe Eliezer say one's allowed to pour the wine through the strainer, and the Chachomim say it's an Issa Deiraisa? We have the same thing with this ornament. According to Reb Meir, it's an Issa Deiraisa, and according to Rebbe Eliezer, it's mutter. Amalei Abaya said to Rav Yosef that you cannot compare the case of this ornament to the case of the strainer we're discussing here. Misabras Reb Eliezer ad Reb Meir koi do Omar chayev eschatos ad Rabbanon koi do Omar poto aval osa v'Omar luhu iu muter lekatchila. The truth is, says the Abaya is now explaining, Rav Sheshes could be right that we don't really find such an extreme machlokes, and therefore it's a question on Rav Kahana. However, over there, it's true that you find Reb Meir says that it's also deraisa, and Reb Eliezer says it's mutter, but there's another opinion which is a compromise. The Chachomim say it's osir, but only midrabanon. So it's not as if Reb Eliezer is contrasting Reb Meir, saying, you Reb Meir say it's an issa deraisa, I think it's mutter lekatchila. No. You Reb Meir say it's an issa deraisa, the Chachomim already argued with you, and said it's an issa derabanon. And I, Reb Eliezer, are saying, and I'm discussing the Chachomim. You Chachomim say it's Issa midrabanon, I hold it's muter lekatchila, and that's okay. Continues the Gemara. Mishumai mosrinon bei. We just saw now, according to Rav Kahana, if somebody strains the wine on Shabbos, he's chayev chatos. We know that in order to be chayev chatos, you have to have been warned, or more accurately, in order to be chayev misa, in order for somebody who does a melacha min haTorah with Eidim, with two witnesses, who will then charge him in Beis Din and he'll be killed, you have to warn them first. And when you warn them, you have to not only tell them it's osur to do what you're doing, you have to tell them why it's osur. So if two witnesses come and see Reuven is about to strain the wine, according to the Chachomim it's an Issa Deraisa, which malacha is it? Straining is not one of the lamates malachas. It must belong or be similar to one of the existing malachas. Rabba Omar Mishum Boira, Rabba says it's like selecting. Boira, you select what you want, what you desire, and what you don't desire, you leave aside. Here too, letting the wine that you desire fall through, and the shemorim, the residue, is going to stay on top, that's Boira. Reb Zera Omar Mishum Merakid, Reb Zera says no. Reb Zera says it's more similar to the malacha of sifting, Merakid, where what you actually do is you let the flour, which is the good part, fall through the holes of the sieve, or to fall down, however they're doing the sifting, and the part that you don't want, the undesirable part, stays on top. Here too, the wine, which is the desirable part, falls through the strainer, and the bits you don't want, the shmorim, stay on top. And we'll soon discuss that a little bit more. So Reb Zera says that straining the wine is compared to sifting. Omar Rabba explains, it's more probable and more logical that straining wine is boirer, is selecting. Ma darkei shel boira, in the same way as the manner that boira is normally done, noitel oichel umaniach hapseiles, you take the desirable part and you just leave the part that you don't want. Afhocha, so too, nami noiteles oichel umaniach hapseiles, pouring the wine through the strainer, you, so to speak, taking the wine away. You're taking away the bit you want, and the bits you don't want just stay on top. And that is similar to boira, that the bits you don't want stay left over. Reb Zera says, it's more logical that straining is similar to sifting. Ma darkei shel meraked, the accepted manner of doing meraked is psoiles milamalo, the part you don't want stays on top, v'oichel milamata, and the good part falls down. It's not always the case. When you sieve certain larger beans and things like that, where you want the bad parts, it might be little insects, whatever it is, to fall through the sieve, and so in some cases the oichel stays on top and the psoiles falls down. However, in the case of meraked, the oichel falls down and the psoiles stays on top. Here too, with the straining of the wine, the oichel falls down and the psoiles stays on top. Says Reb Zera, it's probable that somebody who does straining on Shabbos will have transgressed meraked. Ma darkei shel meraked psoilis milamalo v'oichel milamato, af hocha nami psoilis milamalo v'oichel milamato. Continues the Gemara. Toni Romi bar Yecheskel. Talis kfula lo yaaseh. If a person has a cloak that's folded up, one should not unfold it on top of a frame or on top of 4 posts, making himself a roofing, even though it's temporary. He's only going to keep it there for a short while. But you should not make an oihel on Shabbos. Vim also, if you did it, potter aval osir. Even though it was osir, he's potter. It's not a melocha min haTorah, it's only temporary. Hoya koruch oleh chut oy meshisa. In the case where already from before Shabbos, this talis, this cloak, was attached to the frame, and there's a strap attached to this cloak, and all you have to do is pull the strap and unwind the cloak in order to cover over the whole frame. That's mutal in toisa lekatchila. You're allowed to even initially do that on Shabbos. And we've learned previously that, and we mentioned it earlier on, that an oihel is only considered a moisif al oil aray, an extension to an existing oil, which is mutter on Shabbos, only if the covering that was there from before Shabbos was already a tefach wide. Over here, the Gemara doesn't say that there was already a roofing of a tefach wide, and that's why you're allowed to pull the straps over and extend that. So Tosfos comes to town with that, and Tosfos says, Kagoin shashir bo tefach. Tosfos says it must be that there's already a tefach covered over from before Shabbos, and then you can just unstrap the rest of it and continue it. And then Tosfos has another explanation as well. Continues the Gemara. Boy minei Rav Kahana mirav. Kilo, a canopy. Mahu, is one allowed to set up, is one allowed to drape a piece of material over a canopy on Shabbos? And this canopy, typically the way it was made was that there was a pole, a horizontal pole that was lying flat above the center of the bed. They would drape over the center, over that pole, they would drape some rag or some cloth, and then it would slope down onto the right and onto the left, covering the sides of the bed. The question is one allowed to put on such a covering on Shabbos? And it's interesting, we're going to have 3 different answers, and they're going to contradict each other. And the Gemara is going to explain. Omale, Rav said to Rav Kahana, Af mito asura. Not only in the case of the canopy is it asa, it's also asa to do this in the case of a bed. Not only is one not allowed to set up a canopy on Shabbos, one's also not allowed to set up a bed. We'll soon see why and what. Mitomahu, Rav Kahana asked Rav, is one allowed to set up a bed on Shabbos? Ormarle afkila muteres. He said, not only is one allowed to set up a bed on Shabbos, one's also allowed to set up a canopy on Shabbos. Kila umitomahu. And then Rav Kahana asked Rav, is one allowed to set up a canopy and or a bed on Shabbos? Ormarle, Rav answered back to Rav Kahana, Kila asura umito muteres. It's asa to set up a canopy, but it's mutter to set up a bed. And obviously, these halachas are all contradicting each other. But says the Gemara, Loi Kashya. It's not a question. I'll explain to you in each case what he was referring to. The case where he said that one's not allowed to spread out the canopy and he's not allowed to set up the bed, is talking about the beds of a place of Karmanoi, and these beds were similar to the beds of Galilin. So if you remember, we had the Kisei Galin at the top of the Omud, which was a bed that was, they would take it down, they'll take it apart, they'll disassemble it and then reassemble it. And we said there's an issue with that because you're making an oihel, it's an oihel arai, but you're making an oihel and you're fixing things together. You're not allowed to tightly fix parts of an object together. So he says in that case, the reason you're not allowed to make a canopy, we understand. You're making an oihel. But even the bed you're not allowed to make because it's a type of bed that has been disassembled and you're reassembling it. You should not do that on Shabbos. In the case that it says that one's allowed to also make the bed and also make the kilo, is talking about Kederomi Bar Yecheskel. We just mentioned a moment ago that if there's already a tefach there, or if it's already been prepared from before Shabbos, and all you need is to pull the strap and to uncover the canopy and to let the cloak down, over there we said Rami Bar Yecheskel said it was mutter. So in that case, it's mutter to do it. That's the kilo that's mutter to do lekatchila. And the bed that he said it was mutter to do is obviously talking about the bed that we mentioned at the beginning of the Omud, mito v'kisei traskel v'asla mutter lintoison lekatchila. If the bed has already been fully assembled before Shabbos and you just want to put it down onto its feet, it's mutter. Kilo asura umito muteres. This that Rav told Rav Kahana, that there's a case where one's not allowed to do the canopy, but one is allowed to set up the bed. Umito muteres is kadidon, is typically our beds that we mentioned before, is the bed that's already been assembled, not the beds of, not from Galin or from Kormanoi, where these piece of furniture were disassembled and reassembled. No, they were fully assembled before Shabbos. It's mutter. And a typical canopy, which is asa, is talking about a canopy that's not been prepared before Shabbos, and you're not allowed to make an oihel on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara, another halacha, Omer of Yosef, Chazino lohu lekile debei Rav Huna. In the home of Rav Huna, we saw that the canopies, the me'urta nagidu, in the Friday night on Shabbos, the canopies, they were spread out. They were in place. Umitzafra, and in the morning, chavito ramya, they had been thrown down, which means that the canopies had been taken off. The spreads had been taken off the frame. And we know there's a rule. Anything you're allowed to put up, you're allowed to take down. Anything you're not allowed to take down, you're not allowed to put up, and vice versa. So you see here clearly from the case of Rav Huna that there is a case of a canopy which one is allowed to put up on Shabbos, and one's allowed to take it down on Shabbos. And the Mefarshim discuss what was unique about the canopies in the home of Rav Huna that allowed them to dismantle them on Shabbos, to take off the coverings on Shabbos, and then that implies that one's also would have been allowed to spread them out on Shabbos. The Mefarshim discuss what case we're talking about here. Continues the Gemara, another halacha, Omar Rav Mishum Rav Chia, Viloin, a curtain. You want to cover over an entranceway, you want to spread out a curtain over a doorway, mutal in toisoi or mutal afarkoi, one is allowed to put it into position and take it away, because an oihel is only when you make a covering, a roofing. But here, where it's totally vertical, and you're just putting a piece of material or you're putting something into a doorway to act as a curtain, that is not considered an oihel, and therefore it's mutter on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Omar Shmuel Mishum Reb Chia, Kilas Chasanim, a typical canopy that was used, that was spread over a bridal bed. Mutter lin toisa, one's allowed to hang over this canopy on Shabbos. Mutter lefarka, one's also allowed to take it down on Shabbos. And obviously the Kilas Chasanim is different to a regular canopy. As we mentioned at the top of Amud Aleph, that the kilo, which is also to do on Shabbos, is talking about where there is a width of a tefach at the top, making a type of roofing of a tefach, and then the canopy would slope down onto the sides. However, over here, the Kilas Chasanim, it would come to a sharp point, And therefore, if there's no roofing, it's not, that's going to be the discussion, but it may not be considered an oihel. So it says, mutal in toison and mutal lefoirka. You're allowed to set them up, you're allowed to hang this canopy, and you're allowed to remove it on Shabbos. Omer of Sheishas Breder of Idi, Loi Omron Elo She'ein Begago Tefach. Obviously, we're only talking about a case where the top, where the roofing is of this bed, there's no width of a tefach. If there's a width of a tefach, then covering it over will be considered creating an oihel, and that's asa. Aval yesh begago tefach. If there is a tefach, asura, it's asa to spread out this canopy onto the bridal bed. And another halacha, v'chi ein begago tefach nami loy omron. Even if there isn't, if the bed does not come, if the top of the bed, if this pole on top of the canopy comes to a point and there's no tefach at the top, nami lo omron, it's only mutter elo she'ein bepochos mishloisha samuch legago tefach. Not only is there no tefach on the top of the bed, on top of this canopy, where the top part of the frame, but even if when the canopy is spread out and sloping down, you've got to make sure that within the first 3 tfachim from the top of the canopy, it's not the width of a tefach. That means the angle has to be no larger than 18 degrees. If it's 18 degrees, then by the time you get to 3 tfachim from the top, it's not yet a tefach wide. If the angle is wider than 18 degrees, then within the space, the height of 3 tfachim from the top, it will be a tefach apart, and then it's considered as if there's a roof, and it's asa. If within 3 tvachim from the top of the canopy, samuch legago, the top 3 tvachim, tefach, if the width between the drape, the material on the right and the material on the left is a tefach, also then it's considered that you made a oihel, a roofing, and it's also to do it on Shabbos. V'lo omron elo she'ein b'shipua tefach. And this is a halacha that is very questionable if we rule like this detail, but it says even more than that. If the amount that the slope from the top of the canopy all the way down to the side of the bed, if that's 1 tefach wide, then the whole slope is considered as being a roofing, and that's also asa. In the whole slant, it's not covering the width of a tefach. If in the slant, it's from the center, from the pole that's holding up the canopy until the edge of the bed is a tefach, then it's asa, because shipue oiholim ka'holim domi, because a slanty roofing is also considered a roofing. And so for all intents and purposes, if this bed is 2 tfachim wide, then the canopy is going to slant on each side a tefach, and then you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. So when it says that kilas chasanim mutal in toiso mutal aferka, we're obviously talking about a bed that is less than 2 tfachim wide. And the reason is shipuya yeholim keholim domi, the slant of an oihel, of a roofing, is also considered a covering. And obviously all the Mefarshim ask, what use is there to have a bed, a bridal bed that's 2 tfachim wide? You can't sleep on there, you can just about sit on it. And Rashi already says that it was not made to sleep on. It wasn't made to sleep underneath it. It was obviously a bed that was not very wide. And even when it is mutter, when all these conditions are met, it's only on condition that when the covering, the drapes or whatever the sheets that you're using as this canopy, if they don't go beyond the bed, under the level of the bed or the chair, whatever this kilas chasanim, this bridal bed, if the sheet carries on beyond the layer where a person sits on and goes down another tefach, then it's asa. It doesn't continue beyond the bed a tefach. If it goes beyond the bed a tefach, then also this is also considered you're making a wall. That means the bed itself is going to be a type of a roofing, and you've made walls around it. This draping, this material that's now covering the sides of the bed under where the person would be sitting, is like considered the walls of this tent, so to speak, and the bed itself becomes the roof, and that's going to be osur on Shabbos. Aval noches mepura tefach osur. Continues the Gemara. V'omer of sheishes breder of idi. Hai siona. A siona was a type of a hat with a very wide rim, a felt hat, that the rim was very wide. Shori, one's allowed to wear it on Shabbos. Asks the Gemara, v'ho'itmer siona osur. We learnt in another brisa that, or there was a quote from one of the Chachomim that one's not allowed to wear this hat, this very wide-rimmed hat on Shabbos. Lo kasha. It's not a contradiction. Hard islay tefach. If it's a tefach wide, then it's considered an oihel. Putting it on your head is considered that you're making a roofing of a tefach. It's asa. Hard less be tefach. And if there's no tefach, then it's not considered a covering and you're allowed to wear it. Asks the Gemara, if you're right that wearing a hat with a wide brim is considered making an oihel, making a roofing, then sharviv biglimo tefach hochanami. Are you suggesting that if somebody wears a cloak, and a person will typically take a talis or a cloak and put it over his head, so if he's going to take this cloak and just hold it a tefach beyond his head, above his head, you've made a tefach? Are you suggesting that that's called making a roof and will be chayiv on Shabbos, will be osur on Shabbos? There's nothing to do with the oihel. Wearing a hat is not similar to making a roof, and it's mutter. So what's the discussion here? In one place it says that wearing such a hat is mutter, one place it says it's osur. What's going on? Such a type of hat that fits well, is tightly fastened on the person's head, you're allowed to wear it on Shabbos. There's no risk it's going to fall off, and there's no risk you're going to end up carrying it on Shabbos. But if it's not tightly fitted, it might fall off, you may end up carrying it on Shabbos, which is osur, and therefore you're not allowed to wear such a hat on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Sholach lei Rami bar Yecheskel Rav Huna. Rami bar Yecheskel sent to Rav Huna, Eimelon izi. Tell me, my friend, Hanoch mili ma'al yasa. These excellent teachings, the Amraslon that you were accustomed to tell us, Meshmei de Rav, in the name of Rav. Tarti b'Shabbos. Two of them were regarding the halachas of Shabbos. V'choda b'Torah, and one of them was discussing Torah. Sholach lei. Rav Huna sent back to Rami bar Yecheskel. Hod Tanya, we learnt in a brisa, good, which is a leather bag. We mentioned it at the top of Amud Aleph. Bekisno, that has straps and strings attached to it. Mutter lintoisa b'Shabbos. One is allowed to hang it out on Shabbos. Omar Rav lo yishonu, that's only true, elo bebeis pnei odom, only if two people together are hanging out, as we discussed in Amud Aleph. They will typically spread out this bag by pulling the straps apart and tying the straps to some pegs, to some poles, and then doing that will form a type of an oihel, a type of a covering, a roofing. You're only allowed to do it if there's two people. If two people together are spreading it out, then they will not be pulling it too tight, and therefore it will not be considered a covering, an oihel. Aval ba'odom echad, if a single person is doing it, and he'll tie it on one, and then he'll go to the next peg, to the next hook, and he'll tie it very tight, he'll end up really tying this bag open, stretching it open very tightly, and that will be considered an oihel and is osur. Omar Abaya, v'kila, in the case of a canopy, afilu beyud b'nei odom, even if 10 people are covering a canopy, osur, it's osur. Why? It's inevitable that it's going to be stretched a little bit, and once it's stretched a little bit, it will have the status of an oihel, and it will be osur on Shabbos. Idoch mai. That was the first halacha. What's the second halacha in Hilchos Shabbos? Maihi. The Tanya we learned in the brisa. Kiron oven shenishmeto achas miyarchiseo. If one of its legs got broken away, mutter letaltelo. Even though an oven is muktzah on Shabbos, it's because it's only ever used for baking or cooking in, and you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. But as we've already learned, one is allowed to move a muktzah machmas Issa klisha melachti le'issa. One's allowed to move it if you either need it for something which is mutter, or if you need its place, and therefore you can move it. Shtayim, however, if 2 legs got broken off, and then even during the week, it cannot be used anymore as an oven. It loses its status of a utensil, so it's now not a kli shemelachto le'isa. It's not considered a kli. It's a muktzah machmas gufoi, and also you're not allowed to move it at all on Shabbos. Rav Omar, afilu chad nami osur, even if just 1 foot came away, you're not allowed to move it, not because it's lost its status of a utensil. Rather, gzeira shema yetoka, we're afraid that he's going to firmly fix the leg back into this oven on Shabbos, and doing tkiyah, firmly fixing and attaching 2 parts of a kli together, is osur. It seems from Rashi on Daf Mem Zayin that it's also because of makeh bepatish. It's as if you're giving a final blow, creating a utensil. Okay, those were the 2 halachas in Hilchos Shabbos. Torah. What's the halacha of Torah? Or the halacha, or the statement, this teaching about Torah, what was that? The Omar Rav Asida Torah shetishtachach miYisrael. Eventually, Torah is going to get forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'hafle Hashem es makoischa. Hashem is going to give extraordinary blows, chas v'shalom, to Klal Yisrael. Hafla zu ein yodea ma'u. What's so extraordinary about those blows? We don't know. Kashu Omer, when it says in the pasuk, lochein hineni Yosef, I'm going to add lehafli es ha'omazeh hafle v'ofele. I'm going to do exceedingly extraordinary things to this nation. From there we see that it's the chokhmah and the bina, it's the wisdom and the intelligence that's going to get lost. So hafla zu Torah, we see that when it says v'hafle Hashem es makoscha, Hashem is going to give extraordinary blows, it's referring to the blow of Klal Yisrael forgetting Torah. Tonu Rabbanon. The literal translation is that when the Chachomim went into the vineyard in Yavne, but we've already seen, Rashi brings on Daf Lamed Gimel, that this was actually a Beis HaMedrash that looked like a vineyard. The benches were in semicircles, were going round the edges of the Beis HaMedrash. The Chachomim went into this Beis HaMedrash. Omru, they said, Asida Torah shetishtachach miYisrael. Eventually Torah will get forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Shneimar, as it says in the pasuk, Hine yomim boim, days are coming, Nu'um Hashem Elikim, says Hashem, V'hishlachti ra'ov ba'oretz, and I will send a hunger to the land, Loi ra'ov lalechem, not hunger for bread, V'loi tzomo lamayim, and not thirst for water, Kim lishmoyas dvar Hashem, people will be thirsty to hear the words of Hashem, and they won't find it. And there's going to be a tremendous hunger for the words of Hashem. It says in another pasuk, V'no'u, and they journeyed miyom el yom, from one sea to the next, mitzofoin v'ad mizrach, from the north to the east. Yeshoitatu, they will wander, levakesh es dvar Hashem, to seek the words of Hashem. V'lo yimtzo, and they will not find the words of Hashem. This Dvar Hashem, these words of Hashem that they will wander to seek and will not find, what are they? Zu halacha. This is talking about halachic rulings, a deep understanding into the reasoning behind all the halachas. Dvar Hashem ze'aket, another thing that we will not find, even though we will be searching for it, is knowledge about the end of time. Dvar Hashem zu nevuah. Another Dvar Hashem is prophecy. Prophecy is the words of Hashem. What does it mean that they will wander, they'll be wandering around seeking for the words of Hashem? What does that mean? Who's wandering where, and where are they seeking? Omru, they said, Asida Isha, eventually there's going to be a case where even a woman, Shetitol Kikar Shel Truma, she's going to take a loaf of bread that was Truma, and it was baked or was put into an earthenware oven. And this earthenware oven was tomei because a sheretz, or a tomei animal, was put into its airspace. And the halacha is that if a sheretz is put into the airspace of an earthenware kli or an oven, then the whole oven becomes tomei. And this loaf of truma, which was supposed to be tahir, she's going to want to know, is it tahir? Is this loaf of bread tahir? Is it tomei? What's its status? This woman is going to go from one Beis HaMedrash to the next, from one Beis HaKnesses to the Beis HaMedrash, Leidaim tameahivim toiroi, to know, is this loaf of truma tahira and it's allowed to be eaten, or is it truma tamea which is not allowed to be eaten? Ve'ein mevin im tahirahi ve'im tameahi, and there'll be nobody that will understand enough to tell her whether it's tahir or tame. Says the Gemara, behed yuksiv be. It cannot be that something that's an explicit pasuk is going to get forgotten. It's a pasuk that says, Mikol ha'oichel asher ye'ochel, that any food items in this oven that become tome is tome. So, of course they're going to know it's tome. What's the question? It cannot be that they're going to forget Torah to that extent. Elo leida, what they're not going to know is im rishonohi, im shniohi. They're not going to know is the status of this truma. Is it a rishon letuma or is it a sheni letuma? A sheretz, this insect which is tome, or whatever the sherotzim are, it's an av hatuma. If it touches the inside of the oven, then the oven becomes a rishon. Now, a rishon that touches food is a sheni. So the question is, do we say that this sheretz that's hanging in the airspace of the tanur, of this oven, it's as if it's touching the oven, and it's as if it's touching the food items in the oven? And since the sheretz is an av, the oven and the food items will be a rishon letuma. Or do we say no? The sheretz makes the airspace, which in turn makes the oven tome a rishon. The oven is touching the loaf of truma, and therefore the loaf is going to be a sheni. That's going to be the question. Ve'ein mevin. No one is going to be able to clarify that. Asks the Gemara, Honami masnisenhi. It's very explicit, this halacha. It's not something which is probable is going to get forgotten. Kedetnan, we learnt in a Mishnah, Hasheretz shenimtza betanur, if a sheretz is in the airspace of an oven, an earthenware oven, hapasche betoichoi shnia, then the bread inside it is a sheni letuma. Shehatanur tchila, because the oven is a rishon. The sheretz is going to make the sheretz, which is an av, is going to make the oven into a rishon. The oven is touching the bread, is going to make the bread into a sheni. So how can it be that they're not going to know if the bread is a rishon or a sheni? It's an explicit mishnah, it's a sheni. Says the Gemara, Mistapkeluhu hada omale Rav Adar bar Ava l'Rova. They're going to have a different question, and that they're not going to be able to verify. Lichazia hai tanura commander malya tuma, that Rabbi Adar bar Ava suggested to Rava that in the same way as the airspace is considered as full, even though this sheret is not touching the oven, but since it's in the airspace of the oven, we consider the oven as being blocked, and therefore it's as if the sheretz is touching the oven. Why don't we also say that it's as if the bread is touching the same airspace and is going to become a rishon? V'teheve pas rishona, and then the bread is going to be a rishon, not a sheni. Omalei. So Rav is going to answer back to Rav Adar bar Ava, Lo yomrinon lichazye hai tanura commander malya tuma. We do not view the whole oven as being full, as being blocked up, and therefore the sheretz is as if it's touched the food and it becomes a rishon. Tanya, because in a brisa we explicitly learn that from a pasuk. I may have thought that any regular utensils, metal ones, not earthenware ones have their own set of halachas, because even if a sheretz would touch the outside of an earthenware kli, it would not become tomei. But a regular metal kli, that if a sheretz touches the outside of it, the outside walls, it would become tomei. So the brisa says, I may have thought that if you have a sheretz hanging in the airspace of an oven, or of any klei cheres, and inside the same airspace you've got a metal utensil, I may have thought that the kli is going to become tomei, because there's a fundamental difference between food and kalim. Kalim, utensils, can only ever become a rishon. Food can become sheni, and shlishi and revi, based on what we've seen previously in the Masechta. So over here, if you have a sheretz in the airspace of this oven, if you perceive and you view everything in the airspace as touching the sheretz, then even a metal utensil hanging in the same airspace, it's as if the sheretz touched the utensil, the utensil will become a rishon. But if you say that it's the oven that becomes a rishon, and then the oven is the one that makes everything else tomei, if it touches the oven, and the food will become a sheni, kelim cannot become a sheni. So one of the halachic ramifications of perceiving the entire oven as being full is not only whether the food items in it will be a rishon, but whether utensils in it can become tomei. So the Brisa says, I may have thought that the kelim will become tomei based on Rav Ada bar Arva's logic, that we view the whole oven as being full and the sheretz as touching everything in the oven. Talmud Loimat says in the pasuk says, Kol asher b'toichoi yitmo, everything that's inside this oven will become tomei. And then there's another pasuk that says, the pasuk after that says, Mikol ha'oichel asher ya'ochel, that it's only food items that are in this earthenware kli that become tomei. Oichlin metamin ba'avir klei cher. It's only food in the airspace of an earthenware kli, which in the airspace is also a sheretz. The food becomes tomei. Ve'in kelim metamin ba'avir klei cheres. But these metal kelim will not become tomei. So you see clearly in the Brisa that we do not perceive the whole oven as being full, and therefore the food items will be sheni, and kelim will not be tomei. And that's the end of the Gemara. And what's going to be forgotten? What's going to be forgotten is this Brisa that is refuting Reb Ada bar Arva's question. Reb Ada bar Arva asked a good question. In the same way as the sheretz in the airspace of the tanur makes the tanur tomei, it should make everything else a rishon. And so we found a Brisa that says not that way. The Brisa is going to get forgotten, and people will have this question, they won't know the answer. And all the Mefarshim here, or many Mefarshim here ask, I don't understand, you had an explicit Mishnah before that says that the food is a sheni, not a rishon. So we already know that we don't perceive the whole oven as being full. So what's going on? And we said before that at the end of time, the Mishnayos are not going to be forgotten. And there's a lot of different Achronim who discuss this, how exactly, what's going to be forgotten, what's not going to be forgotten, but that's the basic sugya. Continues the Gemara, continuing on the theme of the forgetting of Torah towards the end of time. Tanya Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Chas v'sholem shetishdakach Torah miYisrael. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, Chas v'sholem, it cannot be that Torah will be forgotten from Klal Yisrael. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, Kiloi sishochach mipi zaroi, Torah will never be forgotten from the descendants of Klal Yisrael. Elo, mani mekayim mishoitetu levakesh es dvar Hashem v'lo yimotzu. How would Reb Shimon ben Yochai, understanding the pasuk that says that people are going to wander around searching for the word of Hashem and they will not find it? Of course, people are going to know Torah, but shelo yimtzu halacha brura or mishnah brura b'mokim echad. There will be some people who will have halacha brura, who will have clarity in all the reasonings behind all the halacha. There might be other people that have a very clear tradition as to the sources on which the halachas are based, but we won't find in one place that also the reasoning behind the halachas and the exact text of the sources of the halachas in one place. They will not be together, and therefore there will always be room for arguments between the chachamim. One will have halacha brura but will not have the mishnah brura. So if they don't know the sources, there'll be other cases they won't know the halachas to. There'll be people who will have the mishnah brura but not the halacha brura. They will not know how to rule the halachas. Either way, the lack of clarity of having also halacha brura, the clarity of halacha and the mishnah brura, the teachings being clear, they're not going to be in one place. That's what's going to happen when chas v'sholem Torah is going to get forgotten. In Mirat Hashem, in the next shiur, we're going to continue from here.